Shoto Todoroki, also known as Shoto, is the protagonist of the My Hero Academia manga and anime series. He is a student in Class 1A at UA High School, where he got in through official recommendations and is training to become a pro hero. He is the youngest son of Endeavor, the former number 2, and current number 1, pro hero. Shoto is a moderately tall and rather muscular young man who is well built for his age. He has quite long hair, though it doesn't pass his neck, and wears bangs, parted twice to not obscure his vision. His hair is evenly split between two colors, white on his right side and crimson red on his left, this unusual coloring being due to his quirk. As another result of this, he also possesses heterochromia, which causes his left eye's iris to appear turquoise, while his right is a brownish dark gray. His eyes, in shape, are quite thin and reserved. Additionally, he has a large burn scar on the left side of his face, which reaches from his hairline to halfway down his cheek. He usually has a serious expression. Despite this, however, several of the girls in his class have claimed that he is handsome, and Mina Ashido even goes as far as to say that he's the best-looking gay in Class 1A. During school hours, he wears the regular male UA uniform, replacing the usual brown dress shoe with casual pale cyan and gray lace-up sneakers. In his initial hero costume, he wears a plain off-white shirt with matching pants and boots, with two gold-colored straps going over his shoulders. He has what appears to be a material resembling ice covering his whole left side, even his head, although it is detachable, which he wears as a way of rejecting the fire aspect of his quirk. His updated hero costume consists of a dark blue jacket with elbow-length sleeves, its collar high and joined in the center by a gray neck piece, baggy pants of the same color, a metal-plated combat vest, and white boots, their soles, and a thin line running down the center of each of them a darker pale gray. He also sports a brown utility belt around his waist, with little metal capsules containing medical supplies hanging off the front. Later, in the Provisional Hero License exam arc, his costume gains two burgundy wrist guards with metal plating, which help to regulate the temperature of his body after his attacks, and his boots now have a set of straps. Sometime during spring break, Shoto further upgrades his costume, which has some visual similarities to his father's second costume. His wrist guards now feature armor-like bracing and are accompanied by plating going from his wrist to his knuckles. His jacket now features a large gray-blue T-shaped stripe going from his waist to his armpits, and his utility belt now holds two large canisters along with his medical supplies. His costume is also a darker shade of blue than his earlier costumes. For mission, humorize, Shoto and his internees at the Endeavor Agency are given special advanced stealth costumes by the World Heroes Association for their mission to Althon. Shoto designs his stealth costume to resemble the third variant, with the entire suit being made of a neoprene black jacket and slim black pants that have built-in knee pads, metal plates to regulate his body temperature, and longer sleeves. He also sports a black utility belt around his waist with silver ironings, as well as two silver plates on his shoulders, with the letters WHA on them. Shoto originally had a cold, aloof personality, which stemmed from his abusive upbringing and complicated family life. Focused and unemotional, Shoto preferred to keep to himself instead of hanging out with other people. After the events of the UA Sports Festival, however, Shoto notably became more sociable and kind, even gaining a sense of humor and occasionally smiling, although still retaining some fragments of his previous distant attitude. After the Provisional Hero License course, he began opening up more to his classmates and has lightened up from his usually serious demeanor. Nonetheless, Shoto was not quite used to socializing yet, coming off as a bit dense when it comes to understanding certain phrases and figures of speech. While usually quiet and reserved, Shoto did initially possess a moderate level of arrogance, which, combined with his solitary tendencies, sometimes made him take the initiative without considering the opinions of others, displaying confidence that he could take on any obstacles with his strength. He used to be much more unfriendly as well, to the point where his cold attitude caused Inasa Yoroshi to resent him while he was none the wiser. Even in the present, Shoto seems to prefer acting alone, although only for practical purposes since doing so allows him to unleash his full power without having to worry about friendly fire. Calm and composed, yet brutal in combat, Shoto is well grounded on the ethics of heroism, only wishing to subdue his frozen opponents as opposed to killing them by prolonging the freezing. Shoto had a deep loathing for his fire abilities, which he inherited from Endeavor, as it symbolized his father's wickedness towards him and his mother as well as what he was born to be, a tool to surpass All Might, a fate that he detested. As such, Shoto decided to rely solely on his freezing power and never use the other half of his quirk in battles, save only for melting his ice, going so far as to cover his left torso and arm with ice in his first hero costume to symbolize his rebellion against his father. Shoto often felt bothered by Endeavor's mere presence, and could barely contain his anger while talking to him, especially whenever the pro-hero brought up the purpose he had intended for his son since before birth. Ironically though, Shoto's animosity towards his father made him more like how Endeavor, being apathetic and indifferent toward others while obsessively focusing on his own goal of rejecting his father. Upon first meeting him, Inasa noticed that Shoto had the same hate-filled glare that Endeavor had, a result of his hatred driving him. During his match with Izuku Midoriya at the UA Sports Festival, Izuku's speech made the memory of his mother's supportive words resurface, and for the first time since his childhood, Shoto used his firepower in combat. After the battle, Shoto had mixed feelings about using his left side, but after reconciling with his mother, Shoto eventually came to terms with the half he once hated and became willing to train it further, now realizing that it is his quirk and not his father's. Despite being scarred by her when he was a young child, Shoto shows no hate or dislike towards his mother, visiting her often ever since the end of the sports festival. Shoto draws his heroic values from All Might, a trait he shares with Izuku and Katsuki Bakugo, having fond memories of watching the symbol of peace on television together with Rei. Despite his difficult past, Shoto doesn't allow his hatred of Endeavor to completely cloud his judgment and still acknowledges him for his skills and capabilities as one of Japan's top heroes. He chose to intern at his father's agency during the Hero Agency internships and later the Hero Work Studies program, although he made it clear that this was purely for his benefit and learning experience rather than any desire to spend time with him. Shoto was quite reflective of his growth, realizing how much Izuku's words had changed his perspective and how better he became because of it. Due to this, Shoto was not against his father deciding that he would try and make amends with his family and become a better person, knowing from experience that a single thing can change a person if they allow it to. However, Shoto's grudge towards Endeavor has not yet disappeared, even if he respects his father's ability as a hero, self-admitting that such resentment can vanish so easily and that he was wrong in trying to bury it, having been denied a normal childhood so that his father could train him to realize his selfish ambitions. Shoto still holds various psychological scars, which tend to re-emerge when others compare him to Endeavor. Because of this and Izuku's influence, Shoto now strives to become a hero, but without walking the same path his father did. Shoto remains relatively cold towards Endeavor and has made it clear that forgiveness for his past treatment of him and his mother is difficult, but has demonstrated worry about his father's safety. Ever since Endeavor tried to repair his relationship with his family, Shoto has taken a cautious, yet hopeful approach to this development. Unlike his brother Natsuo, Shoto does not seem against the possibility of forgiving his father, although he has made it clear to Endeavor that he must earn it. While ruminating over the matter, Izuku states his belief that Shoto is preparing to forgive his father and is waiting for the right time to do so. Overall abilities, having been trained by his father, Endeavor, at a young age, Shoto entered UA high school through recommendations, and has been established as one of the strongest students in Class 1A. He earned second place in both the Quirk Apprehension Test and UA Sports Festival. Shoto also has a great handle over his versatile and powerful quirk, half cold half hot, which grants him incredible dual element capabilities. Using the right side of his body, Shoto can drastically lower temperatures and freeze anything he touches, and generate ice that he can freely mold into numerous constructs that include ice waves that cover large areas, and ice barriers. Shoto also employs his cryokinetic abilities for mobility purposes, such as stacking ice shards behind his back to propel himself forward, glaciating the ground to skate on it, or his signature move, creating trails of ice on which he can surf. From the left side of his body, Shoto can eloquently increase thermogenetic and release scorching hot flames in the form of consuming streams or protective waves. Overall, Shoto has tremendous power, but because of past decisions and circumstances, such as his intentional neglect of one half of his quirk, he has yet to reach his full potential. At the USJ, Shoto was able to easily overpower small-time villains at the landslide zone by himself, and later on showcased elite judgment, combat awareness, and athletic ability during the UA Sports Festival. At the festival, Shoto was able to neutralize a villain bot executor, defeat his swift classmates, Hanta Sero and Tenya Ida, as well as fight on par with Izuku Midoriya for a prolonged period of an eye draw. In his battle against Izuku, a fan claimed that Shoto was already stronger than the average pro hero when he was pitted against Katsuki Bakugo in the final round of the sports festival. There was a chance Shoto could have won the match using his fire powers, but due to inner turmoil, he extinguished his inferno, leaving him open to Katsuki's howitzer impact, and losing the match. Starting with the Hazu incident, Shoto began the full embracement of his left side, as well as his pyro-cryogenic interchangeability, particularly when he, Izuku, and Tenya faced off against the hero killer, Stain. Following his run-in with the hero killer, Shoto is recognized as one of the strongest students of Class 1A. As noted by Pixie Bob. While Shoto may possess full supremacy over his cryokinesis, the control over his pyrokinesis was initially relatively inept, especially in comparison to that of Endeavor. However, after the third match of the joint training battle, Shoto realized that he had disregarded his left side for too long, which had put him and his team at a disadvantage, and resolved to achieve greater mastery over his pyrokinetic abilities by learning the fundamentals of Flash Fire Fist, Endeavor's signature technique. Thanks to his second internship, Shoto's handling over his left side has improved significantly, as he can now use his pyrokinesis in a new variety of ways, such as boosting his movement speed, launching himself through the air, and attacking with blaze-powered punches. And though Shoto was powerful, contending with individuals such as Stain, Eraserhead, Wolfram, Moonfish, Mr. Compress, Gang Orca, Chimera, Ending, and Tamura Shigaraki require Shoto's effective camaraderie with multiple people to prevail against such formidable opponents, excluding Leviathan. That was hardly the case during the climax of the Paranormal Liberation War, wherein he faced his brother Dobby in a battle of flames that nearly resulted in Shoto being burned alive. Had it not been for Izuku's brief intervention. As the body-charring Todoroki brothers resumed their full-power pyrokinetic clash, Shoto ended up losing, but Dobby chose to spare his brother, as it would have been pointless to kill him without Endeavor watching. During Class A's mission to bring Izuku back to the UA after he left following the events of the war, Shoto displayed an even greater mastery over his cryokinetic abilities. In particular, his control over the shape of his ice has become much more refined, being able to form a massive vertical pillar of ice with heaven-piercing ice wall, and even being able to create a smooth curved ramp without the need for a solid framework. Furthermore, he's shown the ability to use his signature move, Flash Freeze Heat Wave, without needing to cool the air down first. Now he can simply put his hands together and unleash the power of both sides at once to create the same effect. By the time the Second War began, Shoto displays increased efficiency over his fire and ice quirk, as noted when he manages to snuff the larger and hotter flames from Dobby's blue flame with his ice. Due to his training with the Pussycats, he has finally managed to reach Dobby's equal in terms of power and efficiency of his quirk. Although Dobby's flames are hotter than Shoto's because the temperature exceeded over 1000 degrees to the point he can melt the All Might statue, Shoto's ice quirk can compensate for his brother's flames, giving him essentially 2 quirk worth of power strong enough to cover ice over a city block and overpower Dobby's flames, besting his older brother, albeit with assistance from the flaming sidekicks. Enhanced durability. Shoto has proven himself to be quite resilient, being able to withstand multiple attacks from Izuku, including a direct, one-for-all enhanced punch at 5% strength to the stomach, without sustaining major injuries. During his fight with Leviathan, Shoto was able to withstand his punch, which was strong enough to destroy the floor of the Humanize headquarters. One of the most impressive examples of Shoto's resilience was when he endured the superior pyrokinesis of Dabi. Although Shoto was partially shielded by his pyrokinesis, and Dabi intentionally held back in his final attack that left Shoto alive. Enhanced stamina. Shoto has shown to be able to endure combat even while injured. For example, in his battle with Stain, he was able to continue fighting and supporting his allies despite suffering from multiple bleeding injuries on his arm and face, and was still able to drag the villain's unconscious body once the battle is over. When he engaged Dabi in a pyrokinetic brawl, Shoto continued to fight on despite his body becoming charred. Enhanced agility. Shoto is fast, agile, and has quick reflexes. He was able to keep first place during the majority of the obstacle race during the sports festival thanks to his athletic ability. He repeatedly created ice walls within a split second to prevent himself from getting thrown out of the ring through his matchups with Izuku and Katsuki. He was the only one in Class 1A capable of at least partly reacting to and dodging Tanya's Recipro Turbo. He was also able to partially dodge a knife thrown at his face on several other attacks by Stain, a notably swift opponent. Keen intellect. Shoto has proven to be a very intelligent person, and despite his training, Shoto is also very skilled in academics, having scored 5th place in the midterms. During the USJ incident, Shoto accurately extrapolated that the invading villains had a quirk user amongst their ranks that could jam communications. At the same time, he realized the attacking villains had an agenda and interrogated some of them to get answers. Shoto's theory was proven correct as the villain's goal was to kill All Might. Shoto also deduced Izuku had a connection to All Might after observing Izuku's power and matching it to that of All Might when the latter was fighting Namu. Though one point about Izuku's link to the symbol of peace, Shoto incorrectly believed Izuku might be All Might's secret love child. Shortly before the Hazu incident, Shoto noticed the look of anger in Tanya's eyes, and easily surmised that he was only taking up an internship in Hazu City to seek vengeance on the hero killer, Stain. While on patrol in Hazu, Shoto was able to work out the location of Izuku, Tanya, and Stain from an emergency call and arrive in time. However, he did complain it took a while, as Izuku didn't relay more than the exact location. When he and Momoyarazu were paired together to face Eraserhead for their first term final exam, Shoto suggested that Momo continuously creates random objects until she was unable to do so, which would signify that the Eraser hero is nearby, all in an attempt to lure him out and act as a diversion so Momo can make her way to the escape gate. Shoto's strategy worked, but as explained by Eraserhead, it was too offense-oriented, as Shoto had placed the burden on himself and did not trust Momo enough. After being scolded by his teacher and approached by his returning classmate, Shoto admitted to being aware of Momo having a plan from the start of their matchup and not inquiring about it, before properly cooperating with her. Observing the second match of the joint training battle involving the teams of Momo and Atsuko Kendo, Shoto noticed a flaw in Atsuka's precautionary modus operandi in separating Momo from her Class 1A teammates. He elucidated that if she wanted to be cautious of Momo, then Atsuka would have had her entire team overwhelm the everything hero at the beginning of the match. After witnessing Izuku's awakening of a second quirk, Shoto speculated that the one-for-all inheritor may be like him, having multiple powers in one singular ability, but Shoto didn't yet recognize the true depth of Izuku's new power. Indomitable will. Shoto has a highly undaunted spirit, not easily giving into intimidation that would disrupt his focus, maintaining a cool head, and pushes through adversity. Initially, Shoto was a jaded and aloof person due to the abuse he and his family received from Endeavor's previous callousness, resulting in Shoto refusing to use his left side in battles as a sign of rejecting his father. Once the UA Sports Festival was underway, Shoto was considerably hellbent on not using his fire powers, but this misguided determination was corrected when he faced Izuku, who vehemently expressed that those powers belonged to Shoto. nobody else. This triggered a latent memory within Shoto's psyche, as he recalled how his mother, Rei Todoroki, and All Might said those same words that inspired Shoto to be a hero that can put people at ease with a smile, just like All Might himself. Remembering both these passionate words and his resolve, Shoto was free from the turmoil that stirred inside of him, finally used the powerhouse within his left side, and expressed how he, like Izuku, will be a hero, and was grateful to Izuku for saving him from the emotional shackles that were weighing him down. Unfortunately, afterward, despite willingly using the power of his left side, Shoto still had some level of uncertainty. While battling Katsuki, Shoto, as Eraserhead explicated, lost his spark following his previous match with Izuku, causing him to not give 100% of his strength. As Shoto was becoming paralyzed with doubt, Izuku cheered him on, encouraging him to do his best, once again reigniting Shoto's will to fight and use his Ignite Kinesis. Yet at the last second, before clashing with Katsuki, Shoto's inner turmoil was too prevalent, causing him to extinguish his conflagration, and in turn, lose the battle against Katsuki. Following the sports festival, Shoto has fortified his drive, becoming more than willing to use his pyrokinetic abilities in battle, and even having the courage to finally face his mother, Rei, who previously, albeit in a mentally unstable state, gave Shoto the scar over his left eye. When the provisional license exam occurred, Shoto's will was tested again when he had a major altercation with Inasa Yorashi, having coldly rebuffing the aerokinetic warm personality when the two met at the UA recommendation entrance exam for recommended students. Shoto realized that he still hasn't moved past Endeavor's maltreatment, and his horrid attitude led to Inasa developing his own hateful disposition towards Shoto himself. The infighting between the two elemental users resulted in them being repeatedly unable to land an attack on Gang Orca and were left at the mercy of him and his sidekicks. Soon after, however, Izuku arrived on the scene and scolded Shoto and Inasa for their actions, making the weakened students realize their mistake of being uncooperative with one another. The pair reaffirmed their convictions, put their differences aside, and finally worked together, despite being incapacitated. Unfortunately, their personal conflict with each other cost them the licensing exam and had to take remedial courses to make up for their imprudence and failure. Having undergone self-reflection, Shoto and Inasa displayed fully mutual congeniality towards each other when they crossed paths again at the remedial exam. During the third match of the joint training battle, Shoto was pressured by Tetsu, but was able to recall Endeavor's counsel on bringing his Inferno to the limit, and then surpassing that very apex. This advice proved pivotal, as Shoto, also recollecting Izuku's words of encouragement, understood that if he wants to become the hero he desires to be, he has to go beyond what his body and quirk are capable of doing. His will sparked again. Shoto brought his pyrokinesis to the limit, equaling the potency of Endeavor's own flames, and was able to better hold his own against Tetsu and put latter's metal skin at risk of melting. In the climax of the Paranormal Liberation War, Shoto's spirit took a significant blow when Dabi revealed his true identity as Toya Todoroki, Shoto's eldest sibling who was thought to have been deceased. Discovering that Toya was alive for years, became a villain, and orchestrated the recent encounters with Hood, Star Servant, and ending. Shoto was sent into a tearful rage. In spite of these revelations, Shoto remained steadfast and was more than willing to engage his corrupted brother, not wavering when the Todoroki brothers clashed. Despite Toya's superior abilities,